the cloud. Hi everyone. We are now officially recording, so all of us is in video. Yay! So tonight we have Cara North with us, and Cara is like an instructional design superstar, and I'm really eager to have her join us tonight and just share some insights about her experience working as an instructional designer in different settings. And also, if you want to share about your experience as a doctoral student in an instructional design program, that will be amazing too. So, yes, Kara, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and very envious that you all are still in courses. I finished all my courses and in a weird way, I missed taking classes. So kind of jealous you all are actually taking a class. So I'm Kara North. I have been in this profession my entire career, which is really crazy to think about. So like a lot of people, I fell into it. So if you talk to a lot of corporate IDs specifically, they kind of find it, kind of in their line of work, and that's completely what happened to me. So I wanted to be a journalist, and so I went to undergrad for journalism. I really like radio and video, and so I thought I could be like a broadcast journalism person. And then I graduated undergrad, and the recession hit. And I couldn't find a job anywhere. And I'm a first generation college student. So I was really kind of embarrassed that, here I got this degree and I couldn't find a job anywhere. So I moved back home with my parents and I grew up in Eastern Kentucky. And I, was really kind of down on my luck. And my parents actually still got a newspaper subscription. And there was a classified ad saying guaranteed interviews at a call center. And I believe anything beats $0 an hour. So I went in and interviewed for a job at a call center and I got the job. And it was horrible. I did not like working in a call center at all. But after I worked there for a couple of months, they promoted me. And one small, tiny sliver of that job was I got to help onboard new people. And after I did my very first training, which I wish I had some documentation of it because I'm sure it was horrible. I was so proud of it though. I like went home and told my parents, I was like, that's what I want to do the rest of my life. And that's when I knew I wanted to do something in the learning and development realm. So I stayed there for about another year. And at the same time, the town that I was working in, Amazon had moved in and they were building this huge customer service center. So when it opened up, all of our best people went in droves and they said, hey, Amazon, if you all need a good trainer, there's a trainer at this other place we're at. You need to get her. Her name is Cara. So I ended up going to Amazon and I did like stand up training for a little bit. And what was interesting at Amazon was where I had the autonomy to kind of build my training at the org that I was at. At Amazon, everything was scripted. Everything came down from corporate. I had these guides I had to follow very specifically. And I really kind of felt like I was put in this weird position because some of the stuff was outdated. It wasn't fitting what people needed. And so I went to my boss one day. I was like, who writes this garbage? I actually said that. Um, and he's like, oh, that's the instructional design team. And we're probably going to have a posting for that. Is that something you'd like to do? And I said, sure. And that's how I became an instructional designer at Amazon. So I was just kind of in the right place at the right time. And that was, gosh, in 2009. That's how long it's been. That's, oh my gosh, I'm old. So I did that for a while. I worked on some really cool initiatives. So I did some training for the Kindle, and then I was also there when the Kindle Fire launched, and I also got to do some of that. I did the learning management system administration. I learned how to do e-learning. I kind of just did a little bit of everything, and I really enjoyed my time there. But then I fell in love with a guy in Columbus, Ohio, and then I made a decision to move to Columbus. And when I moved to Columbus, I was going to stay in the corporate realm, but actually interviewed for a job at Ohio State. And what sold me on working at Ohio State is they had free tuition. And I knew that I didn't have the formal education chops, but I knew I had the ID experience. So I wanted to take advantage of that. So I started to work at Ohio State for the free tuition. I got my master's done super quick. I said, hey, you all pay for PhD? They said, yeah. So I did that too. So I did the Learning Technologies program at Ohio State. I'm currently a PhD candidate. So 7 long years in higher ed, which I can get into that if you want to talk about what the difference is between kind of corporate and corporate and higher ed IDs. But did that, and then at the beginning of this year, I made the decision. I wanted to leave Ohio State. I wanted to get back into a corporate role. And so I started interviewing for jobs. And then I was in the really nice position where I had 2 companies fighting over me in the middle of the pandemic. And so I ended up taking the offer that was the best choice for me. So currently I'm a training operations manager for a large semiconductor manufacturing company. So it's kind of where I'm at now. It's been 4 months in, and like I said, it's been a wild ride, but I get really excited talking to people about instructional design because I'm really biased. I think it's the best profession in the world. It's where you can actually see impact on what you do, and you get paid to be creative and solve problems. I mean, what better profession is there? I love it.
So I want to go down the path of corporate versus higher education because I feel that that's a conversation that we have a lot in the program. So just tell us the dirty laundry. We want to know
Are you
every.
sure? This is being recorded. I have to be careful. No, I'm a very blunt, unfiltered person, so I'm happy to share. So I'm at this kind of, I guess, part of my career where I've kind of had equal experience in both higher ed and corporate. I do say with the caveat that I have worked in other corporate environments. So I've worked in smaller than obviously Fortune 50s, but I only had one experience in higher ed, so it could be different for other people. But one thing about being a higher ed ID is I feel like it's very service oriented. And what I mean by that is often I felt like I was a short line cook at the Krusty Krab. So I would get different little things come in. Hey, help me fix Zoom. Hey, make a video for me. Hey, do this. And I very rarely got to kind of see the course development process from start to finish. Where I was at in my institution, it was actually optional for faculty to work with me. So the people that I got to work with, it was kind of 2 different breeds. One was people that really wanted help and wanted to have a really awesome course, and I didn't get to see enough of those people. A lot of times it was somebody's chair told them to come see me to get something done. And so there's kind of like this orientation of service and like tech support, I think, for higher ed IDs. And again, this is just my experience. I was actually an ID for a college, and I think that it might make a difference depending on where you're oriented in the higher education environment. So if you're like in a distance education division or something like that, you may have a different experience than I did. But at least at a college level, it was very kind of difficult to see the product start to finish. And then the worst part is seeing what people put out there. That was like so hard. I imagine like if you are a grammar hammer and you read a newspaper or something, you want to mark everything up. That's how I am when I see online courses. I just want to take a red pen and just mark everything up. So that was kind of difficult. Excuse me, difficult to deal with there. Alec, I see your question. I will get to it. It's a great one. For corporate though, again, depending on where you sit in the business, sorry, I hit the mute button. Depending on where you sit in the business, you can own the whole learning process. Like you own it all. So you're the one that it starts with you. So currently in a corporate role, I do feel like a good hunk of my time is just fielding different requests for training. And a big part of what I do is tell people, no, that's not a training problem. Great example, I had something come across my desk today about we're rolling out a new software program at my organization, and they wanted to have me make a training about how they submit a help ticket. And I said, is that really a training? Because it's the same system we use. Like, isn't that more of a communication problem? Yeah, I guess it is. And so, I try to save the time of people going through kind of these mandatory learning experiences. So a big part of it's kind of, I think, the gatekeeper of the learning experience and the gatekeeper of people's time. But then the fun part to me is when you actually do get a training initiative, actually really doing something neat. So one of the reasons I selected the org that I currently work at is they are building everything from the ground up. So I am the one that is setting the standard of what good looks like in my organization when it comes to training, and I'm having a blast doing it. So that's been really fun and something that I've really looked forward to. Because unfortunately, depending on where you work at, they may have very strict standards and ways that they want things done. But currently, I'm kind of the one setting that, and it's been really fun.
Thank you. I think we have quite a few questions, but it sounds like being in higher ed, it depends a lot on the institution and what level within the institution you are. I know that some institutions have like an overall instructional design department, and then some have instructional design for faculty or for folks who are in person, and then for folks who are online, and then at the college level too. It sounds like different experiences may be happening, same thing in corporate. But I'm happy to hear that you get to say how you want things to happen. You get that kind of level of freedom and creativity. I think that most of us really enjoy that. So, so there's two questions in the chat. I'll let you go in the order that you feel.
Oh, sure. So I'll get Alex's question here. So he asked about managing the navigation and role of mediator between your team and instructors and clients versus corporate and higher ed. Okay. And again, might be a hot take here, but depending on the organization, I feel like you really have to sell your value a lot, regardless of if you're working in higher ed or corporate. One thing that I was really kind of astonished by during my time in higher ed was faculty had no idea what instructional designers were. And they're like, you do what? What do you do? Do you plan like classrooms? Like, what do you do? And, we've really had to fight a lot just to show our value. So a big part of my role in higher ed was really marketing myself and services. Like, I felt like I had to hustle to get business and get people to give me projects, kind of in the door. Versus in corporate, I feel like I have the opposite problem. Everybody thinks I'm Dr. Phil and I can solve all the problems with a training band-aid. And I'm like, whoa, 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 calm down. So it is a little bit different in that regard, Alec. And I think that's a great question as well. And another question as well, or another kind of dovetail off that, I was an individual contributor when I was in higher ed, but now I'm a manager. So it's a completely different kind of skill set. So not only am I now managing all these requests, but I am an e-learning developer as well. So I still build, even though my boss is like, you got to stop building, you got to delegate it. I'm like, no, I still want to build in storylines, still want to make videos. So I'm still also building, which is probably not healthy, and I probably wouldn't recommend that. But you have a whole lot less stress on you when it comes to that when you're an individual contributor versus being a manager. So not only do I have to manage kind of all these projects going on, but then I'm also like setting the standards, I'm pulling the data metrics, sending that back to my boss, and really trying to show value for our department. So it's a little bit different than it was when I was in higher ed. Um, okay. Phoebe asked about if I prefer to focus on technical development, content writing, strategy research, one more than another. Okay. I had the honor of FaceTiming Dr. Merrill last year, and I actually asked him the same question. And he said something, I'm going to share it with you. He gave me an analogy of a truck driving, like a semi truck driving was cargo, right? And so to him, he said that that truck driving is like your technology, and then your cargo is your content, right? So regardless of, how flashy and beautiful and fast your truck is, if the cargo is not precious, it's not going to make it sing, right? So I think content is the absolute heart of everything that we do. You can have the coolest new tool on the block, but if your content is boring and dull, it's going to be boring and dull. So I really think that it's important to focus on the content, and then you make your smart decision about the technology or however you want to build it. But content to me is definitely king or queen, depending on how you feel. All right. Time management tools that I use. That's a good one, Maxi. So I will definitely be transparent here. This is my Achilles heel. My problem is I still love what I do for a living, and I just sit hours just sucked into what I'm doing. And I'm the person that will continue to move one pixel around for an hour until I like it. And that's not healthy. So I don't recommend that. So, as far as like time management goes, I actually use Trello, which I was going to show you all that as well if you want to see like kind of how what it looks like currently in my org. But I do it with deliverables. So I make little checklists on my cards in Trello and just saying I need to do this, need to do this, need to do this, need to do this. But we also use another tool, and I'll type it here in the chat at my org. It's called Traction.tools. And this one is also a platform for our meetings. And so one thing I appreciate about the org that I work at is we never have a meeting more than 45 minutes. And we always take a break in the meetings. And then we always have to rate the meetings on if they have value or not. And if they don't have value, we stop having them. And so that's something I really appreciate about my org, is that they realize that we need time to do our work instead of being in meetings all the time. And so I really like that as well. But in that traction.tools, you can like set up different projects. And then it's like kind of like a toggle timer. If you're familiar with that, you can just set it, and it just runs in your browser, and it will tell you how long you spent on something. All right. Anu has a question about scenarios to get interviewers to share on the company or ID team culture. All right. Here's my best tip. And this is, if you all like know who I am or whatever, you've probably heard me say this a gazillion times, but um, you have a digital footprint whether you want it or not. So when I'm looking to hire somebody, the first thing I do is I Google you. And if you have something on there, then, I'll look at what you have. If you don't have something on there, I'm like, well, what are you doing? So I think LinkedIn is by far the best tool you can use to really get a pulse check on like what people are doing and how people are working in L&D. So with the exception of maybe two bad apples I can think of offhand, everyone in this profession is so open and honest and excited, because the people that are driven to this profession are people who love people and love helping people. Okay. So if you were to send somebody just a cold LinkedIn message and they're in this profession, I would guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, let's chat. I'll talk to you about that. So I highly recommend like following companies that you want to work at and going on LinkedIn and, following some people that work there, and then seeing if you can build a relationship with them to talk a little bit more about the culture. I think that's the best way into anything. Plus, most companies have these amazing referral bonuses. And so when there's an opportunity open at that company, they're going to remember their new LinkedIn friend and then refer you. And I can tell you as a hiring manager, if there's somebody at my org who's referring somebody to me, I'm going to take a harder look at that than just somebody right out of the street, right? So definitely use that to your advantage. All right. Christina is asking about software. Okay. Well, it's currently in review. This has not been published yet, but I recently did some research this summer with my research lab here at Ohio State about instructional design job postings. So we just pulled 100 job postings from a certain time period this year, and we just went through and coded all of them. And so, out of the 100, I want to say Storyline was mentioned 7 more times than Adobe Captivate. So if I was going to pick a tool to focus on, I'd probably focus on Storyline, but just by a hair. If you have access to Captivate, I think that is also a really great option. I want to say there was maybe, I don't remember offhand, like maybe 15 to 20% said Captivate or Storyline. So they recognize if you had expertise in either, that would be good. But I gotta also say, Christine, I'm seeing a huge trend in videos. I think that there are a lot more instructional designers are looking, and orgs are looking for their learning experiences to have video components. So if you have any experience with using like a Camtasia or Adobe Premiere or Beyond, I really think it's an extra feather in your hat. Okay. think that was all the questions I got.
Those are all absolutely wonderful responses. Thank you so much, Kara. And one thing that I was gonna add to your comment to the question about referrals from Anu, it is not uncommon for me to get an email, a call asking me, an alumni, hey, I have a position that's coming up. Is there anyone that you would refer? So, and most definitely, the manager is more likely to look at that referral than others. Or everybody gets an opportunity, but they're definitely more likely to look at your resume. So, uh, and I'm really excited about that paper. I look forward to reading it. When I worked with Ginger, and Ginger Watson was my doctoral advisor, we did that. We didn't write a paper on it, but we actually did a presentation at AACT. It was actually my very first AACT presentation. I was so freaking nervous. And it was a wonderful research project. We didn't continue through with the paper, but I'm really excited to see that. So
Well, it
thank you.
depends on where you're reviewing. You may or may not see it.
Well, I'd love to. I think that's a wonderful kind of like research because it really like you look at job ads and some job ads, some people that write the job ads have a really good idea of like who is an instructional designer, what they do, and sometimes it's like some random person put together the job ad and they're just put random information in it. So it's a good way to know what companies are looking for. Any additional questions at this point?
What is your favorite learning theory
Ooh,
that you use?
my favorite learning theory. Hmm. I don't know, like this is really old school classic, but I actually use like the Gagne a lot. And the reason that I use it is I think that like the nine kind of constructs of it are just good questions to kind of guide your learning experience, right? So as you're thinking about, how are you going to grab someone's attention? One thing that immediately puts me to sleep, I don't know how you all feel about it, is starting a learning experience with those learning objectives. Now, the learning objectives are important. They're important because they're helping you kind of construct what your learning experience is, but I don't think the learner needs it right out of the gate. What I like to do with them is I like to like flip it and I like to put them at the end as a nice little recap of the learning experience. Okay, now that you've went through it, you should be able to boom, 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 because I just like making an entrance. So if because again, depending on what system you put your stuff in, I find that users are usually pretty frustrated and they've already spent at least, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes of their time just even opening what it is because they've had to sign into the system. My old institution had two-factor authentication just to get into the learning management system. So then I got to find my phone, hit the button, and then get in. And then sometimes it makes me sign back in, and then I got to find where it is. So they're already kind of frustrated. So I like to just hit them like straight up with it, and get them kind of soaked into whatever it is that I'm doing. So I again really big fan of Gagne's work, but again, you also can't go wrong with Dr. Merrill. I was like a complete fangirl of him after I got to FaceTime him last year. Like I'm just like a huge fan for life.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for that, Kara. So I guess like another question I have is, tell us about your interview experiences. I'm hearing a lot about these interview experiences in which the students have to go in and they're put in a room and they're giving a task and you have so much time to like do whatever it is that they give you like an assignment. So what has been your experience? You've recently transitioned to a new position. I'm sure it's different when you're transitioning at different levels, but what has been your experience with interviews?
Okay, if you want, I can break it down to myself as a candidate, then I can like take you behind the cat curtain here and tell you about what I look for as a hiring manager, if you like. So as a candidate, um, if the third, fourth round, they're asking me to do a task or whatever, I'm just going to put out there, I'm not a huge fan of that, and here's why. A lot of people that are looking for jobs do not have access to Articulate Storyline, Adobe Captivate, right? Or if they did, they maybe had a 30-day trial and then they're like illegally making another email address to get another trial or something like that. So I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on a job candidate. So that's why I require a portfolio for any instructional design job. I want to see like what you got, right? But I'm not a huge fan of it. And I will tell you a story. My podcasting partner, he actually interviewed and was pretty sure that the company that made him do this was looking for kind of free work. It was really shady because they basically gave him a piece of onboarding and said make this, and then he shared it with them like in the Articulate review link, and they're like, no, we want your files too. And he's like, no, I'm not giving you my files. And he wrote this real kind of crass email to them saying, thanks but no thanks. So not saying all of them are like that. I see the intent behind it, but I also am very empathetic to people in the job market, because I realize that software programs are very expensive. It also relies on someone having a good, reliable computer. There's all these other factors that I feel like should not penalize somebody from potentially getting a job if they can do the work. So from a hiring manager perspective, I'll give you kind of two tips. The first is if you are taking an interview, well, okay, let me back up. If you're interviewing at a company, in your research, dig really deep and see if you can find the company's core values, leadership principles, etc. Because here's what usually happens. Those behavioral interview questions like no one likes, they are almost always aligned to the core values or leadership principles of that company. And the reason companies ask you those questions is because they're comparing your answer to every other candidate. It's an easy way to give everybody kind of an even playing field when it comes to questions. So I recommend, and this is something I learned at Amazon, when you answer a question, doing the STAR method. So tell them what was the situation and task, what action did you take, and what was the result. And what happens is when you do that, the people that are taking the notes during the interview, they will love you because you're very easily putting that in and it's easy for them to remember. So that's my first tip. Second tip, and this is a big one, if you have a portfolio, which I feel like everyone should, do not have anything proprietary in that portfolio, meaning don't put the full enchilada of the learning experience in there if it's something that you built for a former organization, a client, etc., unless you have some kind of documentation saying that you have permission to share it. So case in point, I was reviewing a candidate, looked really great on paper, asked for the portfolio. Portfolio was beautiful, open it up. They did some work for the Department of Defense, and I saw plans of the building in the learning experience. And most organizations have really thick NDAs, my organization included, and I knew if I took a chance hiring that person and they shared a learning experience that had kind of our secret sauce of manufacturing out there, it'd be my head on a platter, and I wasn't willing to take that risk with a candidate, so that was an immediate do not hire for me.
Thank you, Cara. Any additional questions for Cara?
Yeah, Anu. That's probably why.
I have a question,
Yeah,
if that's okay.
yeah, of
So
course.
I feel like I psych myself out. And when I get asked a general question in an interview, like, I'm going to hand you a problem, describe your process from start to finish. What are like the key things I need to make sure I'm hitting? Because I feel like I answer it differently every time. And I'm like, well, I should have said this instead. And then I'm like, well, maybe they didn't want me to say that. And I don't know. And I just like need a solid answer that I can revert back to.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. That's common. But before I answer, I just want to say you are good enough. Don't let that imposter get in your head. You definitely belong in this profession if this is what you want to do, and don't let it get to you. I definitely tolerate self-talk to myself that I wouldn't let other people talk to me that way, right? So just want to put that out there. So you have to remember, no matter where you work, you're going to have some kind of orientation to what the learning and development department looks like at that org. Some people manage it one way, some people manage it other ways. You know, a really beautiful PowerPoint might be the gold standard of a learning experience at one org, but it might be another org's trash, right? So when you're answering this question, first thing I would mention is, you know, I'm not sure how your organization does it, but with my experience, this is how I would process it. And by saying that caveat, that makes me as a hiring manager think, okay, this person gets it. They've worked in other orgs. They know that there's like the kind of this little caveat in there. And I think the big ones are, and again, it's silly but true. Make sure you answer the question. You know, don't get all kind of flustered. And if you're starting to talk and you remember something, just say, okay, just wait a moment, let me back up and add it in, no problem. Because the other thing too is I realize now people get so nervous in interviews. So usually the first 2 or 3 questions, if they're talking in circles, I'll usually just kind of stop them like, hey, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I completely understand people are nervous, right? So do that. Make sure that you have kind of told this story of who you are as a designer in it. So think about maybe 2 things that are really important to you and something that you really care about, and put that into your story. So for me, I'm definitely an assessment and evaluation snob. So I'm always going to be mentioning about why I think it's so important that whatever it is that the assessment is measuring content knowledge and not deduction skills. And 2, my evaluations are actually giving me information that's going to improve the learning experience, not just, did you like the experience? Was the food good? No, that doesn't get you anything, right? So whatever those are for you, I would pick those and then again, continue to highlight those in that question.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Maxilu and Phoebe. Um, I have a question for you, Cara. We have quite a few students in this class who are taking their very first semester of instructional design. So this is like completely new to them. Um, do you have any kind of advice for anyone who's just starting their journey, and what are some key things that they should focus on, because it can be very overwhelming the very first semester?
Sure can. Oh, hey, puppy dog. Puppy dog's cute. So just a couple things. One, I would say love the process and know that you're not going to be a tool expert overnight. You're not going to be a pedagogy expert overnight. You're not going to be a learning theory expert overnight. So enjoy the journey, I think, you know, and just take it one step at a time. Another thing too is really try a little bit of everything. This is your time to experiment when you're in the program. Had I not worked at Ohio State, I would not know half of what I know about assessment and evaluation. And the only reason I know what I know is because for 2 years that I worked at the university, I had a psychometrician that was my boss. And that was the best thing that I ever did for my career, is just working under him and learning more about it. So don't be afraid to kind of take you know, maybe unexpected turns in your experimentation. I mean, learn a little bit more about assessment, learn a little bit more about evaluation, learn a little bit more about graphic design, whatever kind of floats your boat, feel free to do that. But again, just be patient with yourself. The thing I tell a lot of people is, you know, I've done this for 13 years now. I still don't know everything. I learn something every day, and it's to be expected. You know, that's kind of the cool thing about this profession, is there's always a million ways to learn something new, and the people are kind to work with, and you know, it's a great community of people. So just enjoy the process and trust it, and just don't get frustrated. You know, I believe that especially now with everything going on, the job market is probably the hottest it's been in a long time. And so there is work for you. You can make a good living doing this job, and it's a very low stress job in the sense that, you don't take your work home with you. You can have a nice work family balance, even in a corporate environment. I know a lot of people are kind of scared to go to a corporate environment because they fear that they don't have that. And yeah, there's days that it gets a little stressful, but overall, it's a really nice profession. All right, Anu. Which do you feel most comfortable with career-wise and personally, higher ed or corporate? Definitely career-wise and personally corporate. Just because I'm a little bit of a control freak. I really like being at the table the whole time, and being able to kind of own the learning experience, letting the buck kind of stop with me with it. Having the keys to the kingdom and the insight of the business is something really magical in a corporate environment with learning and development. You're usually the first to know the cool stuff, right? I remember before Kindle Fire launched, our team got a Kindle Fire like 2 months before they were sold in the United States, and it was like top secret. And like I just felt so awesome, kind of having this little tech fun with something that like other people didn't have access to. So I like that. Now, with that being said, I think higher ed is a great place to work if you're going to school. It's a great place to work. And now that I'm, a candidate and I'm working on my dissertation, I had this conversation with my partner the other day. It's like, it's really hard for me to still see myself as a student because my work and school just blended so beautifully during my time at Ohio State. So even though like I would do ID during the day, I'd still be reading and thinking about it like in the evening as well. So it was like kind of like this omega learning time for me. Plus I got paid to be doing what I was studying, and it was a really kind of magical moment. So I always tell people, if you can work at a university that offers a tuition benefit, do it. Don't go into debt if you don't have to. And the balance as far as dealing with kind of the day-to-day in higher ed, I felt like was a whole lot easier than corporate can be sometimes.
That's actually really nice. We have quite a few individuals in the class and in the program who work here at UT and are taking classes in the program. They're not necessarily working as IDs, but I'm pretty sure they'll be making that transition soon.
There you go.
Uh, so I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned your doctoral program, one of the things that I often get mentioned is, should you consider doing a doctoral degree? Do you want to work as an instructional designer in the corporate sector? Why would you go why get a degree? Why spend that extra time suffering? Well, not suffering, learning. Why do you want to do it? What's in it for you?
Oh, that's a good question. So in the beginning, I thought I wanted to be a professor. Like I shared earlier, I'm a first generation college student. I love instructional design, and I thought, what would be cooler than teaching instructional design? And so my first year, I was like, I want to do this. I want to be a professor. But after working at the institution I was studying at in the college, the same college too. So I not only was I like a student in the college, but like I was a staff member too. I don't know how else to put this, but after kind of seeing how the sausage was made, I decided that wasn't a good fit for me. But I've already made the decision that, I was doing this, I'm still pursuing it. And for me, I don't want to work in corporate forever. Like the dream for me is, I want to own my own consulting business, and I do have a consulting business on the side that I do, but I want to work for me. Like I want to be in charge of me, and I feel like with my experience and having that extra credential behind my name does give me a little bit more authority over maybe somebody that doesn't. So that's why I'm continuing to do it, but I definitely am doing it for the love of learning at this point. I mean, no one said for my job I had to do it. No one told me that this is something I need to do to further my career. This is truly in the pursuit of loving to learn. And, there's something special about that, right? So if you're doing it on your own terms, there's not some of the pressures that would be there otherwise.
I agree. You most definitely have to be doing it for yourself and your for own growth, and it makes a huge difference. So thank you for that. If you want to transition into project management at this time, it will be a good time to do that. It's 7:42, and I want to make sure that we don't keep you longer. Maybe this will give us time to come up with some good questions as we go towards the end of the session.
Okay. All right. So I just put this together really quickly. I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's something really, really important. And I've seen a change in my orientation on how I manage projects throughout my career. But this is the question that guides me daily in my work. Who's doing what by when, right? So I'm wanting to know, what are we currently doing? When is it going to be done and what is it, right? Because there's so many moving pieces to kind of how we do instructional design. And just so you all know, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but when I first started, I felt like I worked here. I felt like, I was getting, all these orders, hey, do this, do this, do this. And I didn't have the agency or autonomy to really push back because I was still learning myself. And then I just kind of, told myself, one day when I'm in charge, I'm going to do things differently. And so that's now, which is kind of weird to think about. So there's a couple different ways that I like to manage projects. And so the way that I do it is kind of a blend of all three. So just hang with me here. But I'm going to start talking about Kanban. And so Kanban is kind of this manufacturing based process. I think it actually started at Toyota, but then it got picked up a little bit by some software development firms. And the neat thing about Kanban is it's not really time boxed, meaning that, back to my question, who's doing what by when, it doesn't really answer the when, but it answers the who is doing what. And for some stakeholders that I deal with, this works really great. For example, in my org, we have a quality assurance component, and they have, various projects that come up from time to time, but there's not really any set dates for things. Their leadership is very much kind of a idea factory, and so they're like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we did this, and wouldn't it be great to do this? So for working with them, I kind of take this approach because I don't have these strict deadlines, and it's kind of those things like, oh, on a rainy day we could work on this particular thing. So I mentioned that I use Trello, and so I put together like fake little boards just to kind of show you all what this would look like. So this would be an example of how you might want to manage through Kanban with Trello here. So, you just have a general information list of things. You have like the to-dos, and then in progress. So as you can see, like here's kind of the deliverables of like the list, and then here is like what is currently being done, and then you pop it over here to finish, and then parking lot is just basically just those weird things you can't really categorize but might want to be aware of. So again, working with one element of the business, I do more of this Kanban approach. But for most of my work, I take kind of this agile scrum approach. And so essentially what this is that gets a little bit closer to the who's doing what by when. So with scrum, I'm focused a lot on how things are kind of boxed in. So we set things up in sprints, and then by the end of the sprint, we will have some kind of a tangible product. Whereas in the Kanban, you know, they can sit here in progress for months, right? But they're sitting there for months because either the stakeholders aren't available for things, or we're waiting on like a new process to be approved in our org for quality. So there's kind of all these like little hindrance things. But if I'm talking to somebody and they're like, listen, I got all my stuff together, we need to build this out, this is what we're looking at, I'm going to take a scrum approach. And so this is kind of what it would look like. Again, this is just a Trello template just to show you. But basically we do the sprint. I usually will do like the date here and then put to do and then in progress, verify, and then sign off. So we actually have something at the end of that. And the cool thing about doing this is, I have a very small team currently. So I partner with other folks in the organization, specifically our continuous improvement team is like my extended team. So they're a little bit bigger than my group. So I'm able to partner with them for a lot of this stuff too, which has been good. Um, and then after I kind of get kind of the how I manage the project, the kind of the what of getting it done, I actually am a huge fangirl of Megan Torrance. If you've never looked her up, you totally should. She has this methodology called Llama, which is a lot like Agile methodology. And so as we're building our learning experiences, instead of like the traditional kind of Addy waterfall, we actually do something like this. So we have kind of a rapid prototype, rapid prototype, rapid prototype. So we are getting multiple feedback points from our subject matter experts to continue to improve it. Because again, I think I shared I'm that person that really gets caught in the details sometimes. This actually helps me because a lot of times I'll just sit and look at something and it's hard to know when it's good enough, right? So now that I usually will go through 3 review cycles, it keeps me a little bit more balanced on things. So I think that was all that I had on that. I think I saw some questions. I'll stop sharing here.
I guess my
Oh,
question was, Cara, how long is your sprint?
Oh, good question. It depends. It depends on what we're doing. So I've had some as short as 2 weeks. I've had one that has been 6 weeks. So one that I currently am in right now, it's going to be a 6 week total. And let me back up here. So for each sprint that we do, we have a Monday morning stand up, and so that's when we're doing the who's doing what by when. And when we're in that sprint, we will talk about how many hours we're dedicating. So I'm working on a project right now with our continuous improvement team. I'm also overseeing a software implementation, and I just said on our Monday morning, listen, I can give you all about 15 hours of my time this week. So here's what I'm going to do. Boom, boom, boom. Hey, how many hours can you give this week? Oh, I can give 20. Okay, boom, boom, boom. So it's more time-based versus the Kanban is more kind of, unicorns in the sky. It's like, oh, here's all these things, here's what we're working on, kind of thing. So yeah, that it just kind of depends on the project.
Mhm. That's
Good
great.
question.
Um, any additional questions for Cara? And I'm very happy to see that you use 2 different types of like project management approach, because a lot of what I've been reading is organizations have to choose one. So it's really nice to see that you are able to combine both of them within the organization.
Well, thanks. Hopefully it's good. We'll see. The nice thing is, I'm still kind of lean enough to speak that I can experiment. So, just so you all know, here's kind of a snapshot, and this is like, think of this as like my dashboard, that like lets me know like what is coming up. So as you can see, these are our current projects that we have going on right now. I have an upcoming one. I don't have anyone waiting for feedback right now. And then here were some of our finished ones. So just to show you, I typically on these, I will say, what is it? Who are our partners? So partners meaning who's critical to delivering what it is. So in this case, we have our HR business partner and our learning management system administrator, our communications manager, who we work in tandem on communicating out what's going on, and then our project manager for the implementation, our subject matter experts. So these are the people that actually work in the software. And as you can see, let's see, I did a curriculum map, I did a module, I did some facilitator guides because we did some virtual instructor-led training. I did some general navigation training. I still have all this other stuff that I need to do. And honestly, this one, I've called it a hydra because every time I feel like I get something done, another deliverable grows. And then I also like will put in here like examples of the stuff that I did. So I don't know if y'all can still see this. So I like to use Google Jamboard when I'm planning things out. And so this was just a quick and dirty little curriculum map of what we were going to do for this particular project. So we start with everybody gets this kind of 101 e-learning module, and then they go through paths of what they do in our organization. So these are different levels of engineers that we have. And then these were the squares here are the actual courses that they had to go through. And then currently what we're doing is we're going through doing a certification, meaning we're making them do a performance test in the software. So we actually have somebody going through and saying, okay, show me how to log in, show me how to do this, show me. So that way we know when we go live, which is at the end of this month, please send me prayers. People are good to go. So yeah, so that's kind of how I run my Trello as far as like a dashboard goes. I don't know if that's helpful to kind of see that. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. As you can imagine, you actually have to take the time to build it, and that's half the battle, finding the time. But it's really nice just to give a snapshot, especially to my boss, because I don't think he appreciates and knows everything that I do on a day-to-day basis. So it's good to just share stuff like this with him.
Thank you. This is another level of organization. So thank you for sharing this.
Of course.
So we have about 5 more minutes. Does anyone have any questions for Cara as we finish up this session? You've shared so many insights, knowledge. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm also a huge fan of your professor, FYI. So just throwing that out there.
I'm gonna miss seeing Cara at conferences this year. I was just posting on social media. I get to see some really cool people at conferences, and Cara is one of those. Last year, I saw her at ACT, and she was also for Dev Learn. That was both of them were in Vegas, and I don't even know how she does it. She was doing 2 conferences at once.
I wouldn't recommend that. Probably never going to do that again. That was not smart. And sadly, I did submit for AECT. I did get accepted, but then my organization has no funding this year. Like they shut down like all student travel funding. So it's like, so I'm not going to AECT this year. But
Oh, well, I had to do it out of pocket too. Oh, wow, now this is on record.
we can censor that, right?
So anyways, well, thank you so much, Cara. Love having you in class, so much to learn from you. And I'm so glad that I recorded this because I know that everyone's gonna go back and look at different software tools and just general knowledge that you share with us tonight. And thank you so much for preparing a template to share with us. That's absolutely wonderful.
Oh, actually, one thing to that, I'll put my email address in here. If you use Trello and you want a copy of those templates, just let me know and I can share them with you if you want them.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So Kara's just posted her email address on the chat. Feel free to reach out to her. And she's just absolutely wonderful when it comes to like replying. I don't even know how you do it. She always replies back and she always has some good insight to share with you. So thank you, Kara. I don't
Thank
want to
you.
take more of your time. We truly, truly appreciate having you here in class tonight. Thank you.
Nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Meet myself. Thank you. Oh, she's gone. Okay, bye.
So, stop recording.